What up, y'all? Dave Bloom here, and I'm going to build some components with Aviator today. I'm going to start with a real simple one because I wanted to record a few videos about what Aviator is and specifically what Aviator CSS is all about. I guess Aviator CSS is technically the newest kid on the block as far as utility CSS frameworks or syntaxes, and I want to explain why I made it a little bit if you didn't catch the Bridge Builders episode I was on a few days ago. And if you just want to see somebody building with it and understand and start to kind of gather why it's useful and what it has in terms of pros that maybe a traditional no code or low code site builder for WordPress might have or lack. So on the show that I was on, we were tasked with building some components off of this layout. And we didn't get around to building anything in the header. So I wanted to take some time and build this kind of top bar in the header so that you'd see how I would approach something like this. And I can underscore the idea that like whatever I build in this syntax can actually just be copied and pasted right into your own site without you having to do some funky like post importing or import a configuration of an insanely complicated settings panel or find the right setting for something. It's designed to be so expressive and so HTML-y that you can just copy and paste it in and it should work. So I'm going to build this top like navy blue like sales bar part of the template. It's dead simple, but it does have a few different looks as you get into smaller screens. And so we'll account for those. It'll give us an opportunity to see how the responsive modifiers work. And if you're familiar with Tailwind CSS, you'll know that immediately. And so I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to edit this page in Aviator. And while I'm over here, I might as well just bring this down to a mobile level. We'll start mobile first and just go from there. So let's give you mobile look. Okay, so what we can see is that we have, this outer bluish container, and there are pretty much two items in it, the sale paragraph, which is not a link, and then this link, which links to their pricing page. So that'll come in handy when we're starting to name our elements in Aviator. So we're at Aviator CSS. I'm just going to bring a blank component into the build, and I can just, type whatever, and it'll show up whatever. So we're on our way. So instead of just building this with divs, I'm going to use a structure that I showed off in the other call called the outer. It's actually an abbreviation. It's two elements nested together, a section and then a child of that section that I call a subsection. So if I just type the word outer and hit tab, it's going to expand into about 6 lines of HTML here, and I'll explain what this is doing. So the outer section is holding the entire structure and is usually what gets like this the padding and north, south, east, west. And you can see that here, that's the section. I chose to name the immediate child of this subsection, which is not a standard HTML5 element, but the thing about HTML5 is you can call elements really whatever you want as long as you give them the right styles. And so that serves as kind of the inner, like where the content lives inside of that padded section. And if I give that a border, you can see that it's empty, but that's where our stuff is going to live. So that way we have like a nice, tidy, like consistently spaced, inner thing. You might think about like this as a row and this as a column or a module or something like that if you're coming from, no code world. But this structure helps me avoid the kind of divitis that happens with larger components that have a lot of nested things. It gives kind of parts of the structure a name. So I kind of know intuitively that like I will add certain kinds of styles to my section if I want to like give it a background. And then I will add other things here if I want to like kind of tuck all of the content things in. But that's kind of my approach to it. You can write any HTML and CSS in here that you want, but this is kind of like what I recommend and what the components in the component library will be written as. But again, you can go nuts and you can write any HTML in here you need to. Okay, so now we have our outer. Let's think about our children of the subsection. And I usually will use another kind of unorthodox or non-standard tag called item. In fact, I'm going to use an item that's a flex column, like that. So what that'll do is it'll create another element that is flexed. And don't worry if these CSS classes look crazy to you. They are definitely unorthodox, and that's Aviator CSS for you. But you want to start thinking about organizing and giving names to your elements so that it's very easy to kind of see what they are from a distance. So I'll say like sale link here, do another IFC, and I already have a couple of things that I can work with. If I give this another kind of inspector class, not just RR to give it a red border, but like BC to border the children, we'll actually see that these are stacked on top of each other. And if I wanted to do something more like this, I'd obviously need to change the flex direction of the parent. So I don't have to go find this in some settings panel. I don't have to go see how some theme developer or page builder developer decided to call this, or what icon they decided to give to it, or just go hunt that down along with any other CSS property I want to change. I just see the flex direction that's column and I change it to row, and I just keep working. So everything is available to you. As grotesque or as verbose as this might look at first glance, because it is new, know that like the gains from having all this information in front of you instead of 15 lines of code, in my opinion, and you can differ, everybody has their own opinion, but like having all of this available to me is so useful as far as being able to make layout decisions and just build what you want quickly. I'm moving slowly and talking my way through this, but just seeing this stuff is really valuable. So I'm going to continue my journey by just ditching the section padding on here. This is a constant coming from the design system that ships with Aviator. I like to use a global constant that's maybe a little bit, I guess, less than an inch, to represent the kind of just spacing that section should have. And a hero maybe has more spacing, north and south. Maybe, your sections just kind of have this level of spacing, and maybe you want to cut that in half or cut it in fourth when you have the space between two things that are sitting next to each other. But in order to build rhythm and to have a design that really hangs together nicely, using as many like global constants for spacing is a real pro move. Because if you have things just kind of arbitrarily margined and padded out everywhere, that creates the kind of like latent disarray and inconsistency that makes designs look shittier. I mean, it's not even shitty, like amateurish. It's just, there's something that like is underneath it, and you can kind of tell this is not like a pro thing. So one win is just padding things and spacing things as rhythmically as you can. You don't have to be super hardcore about it, but in this case, I usually like to have my sections be, spaced evenly and dependably, and then also have a single source of truth in my design system where I can change that. But I'll get to the design system in another video. Right now, I just want to cut this down to something like a rem. And so now I can see that like the padding is a lot tighter, but I do want these to kind of hug the edges. So the first thing I also want to do is just make each of them as wide as their content. So what I can do is put my cursor in here. I can command click to multi-cursor, and I can just say width, fit, content, and we get that. And then immediately I understand, okay, well, if I'm flexing the parent as a row, I just need to justify content space between. And there are abbreviations for this, but I want to write all this out here so you wouldn't get confused and I wouldn't be moving too fast. Okay, so that's getting there. So we want to change this, just kind of ground ourselves a little bit. Sale, and let's do an anchor tag tab. And let's just say get 50% off for life. Yep, get off for life. You know what, maybe we'll even use an arrow later, but there's no arrow there now, so we're not going to build that. I want to talk about schemes. So schemes are a custom class in Aviator. that essentially set the background and foreground colors at the same time. So I could set the background color to whatever I wanted to, right? But I could even use a value from my design system, maybe a little darker or lighter, right? Let me go with that dark one. That seems about it. And then I could set the color to white. But I noticed that this is a little bit dimmer than this. And what the scheme class does is it sets both of these at the same time, but it gives the foreground color a little bit more of a muted color so that you can reserve a property for what I call a text pop class. And I'll show you that in a sec. So scheme A1000. And you can see that these are kind of a little gray. So comfortable contrast. You can still see it, but it's not pure white. And then if I go here and I say the color of this text needs to be the text pop. So that responds to that, marries up with the scheme. This is a little bit more advanced, but if I change the scheme, the pop will always be high contrast, or at least as high contrast as I can get it. So if I want a lighter scheme, you can see that this one's a little bit grayer, and this is still pretty substantial. And then when it goes in the darker schemes, so you can find the right kind of color scheme for your thing. Okay, so let's preview on a mobile device, and I think we're pretty much good here for mobile. Maybe we want a hover effect. Yeah. So we want it to get that text pop class on hover. So all we have to do is say class equals, and then this is the example of using a modifier, hover : and then anything that I write here will be given to it on hover. So color text pop. Maybe I should just put pop. I don't know. I think whatever. I'll figure that out. So you can see it right there. It's this is blocking it a little bit, and maybe I need to fix my interact mode so that we don't see these little toolbars. But rest assured, that is totally working. Okay, so now we are ready to move up. Actually, you know what? I'm not happy with that. I want a transition. So I could type transition all 0.3 seconds. Ease. See if you can see this. It's very subtle, but maybe this one will be a little bit. It's there. So we'll see it in a second, but I would like to be able to just throw that in. It's just a little nice touch, and we'll see it cascade upwards as we go to larger screen sizes. Okay, so if we bounce over to a tablet in portrait mode, we'll see that now our two items are kind of in the center, and they're separated. You can't probably see it really well from here, but they're separated by a very subtle vertical rule. I'll probably just add a border to one of these guys to do that. But let's go back to the fit to window. And so we also see that the text has changed from sale to craft holiday sale. And so our designer is torturing us, but we're going to make it happen because we're good developers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to need this to show on small screens and then hide on medium screens. And then I'm going to need some other text to show on medium screens and hide on the smaller screens. Now I could do this with the words themselves and span and stuff like that, but I'm just going to make it pretty easy on myself. Select this text, Command Shift, comma, or command opening bracket, I guess. Pac-Man, mouth eating that way. And I'm just going to type something like span and hit return. If you use CodePen, I think the command is Command Shift A to wrap your selection with an abbreviation. So I just wrap this with a span, and now I'm going to make another span that says craft holiday sale. Craft. Is it capitalized? Let's get this exactly right. All right. Holiday sale. Okay, let's hit Command S to format. And then I'm going to multi-cursor and make sure and do my little display dance. Or actually, no, I'm not. I'm just going to type class. So we want this one to show and then hide on medium screens. So medium is going to be display none. And then we want this one to do the opposite. So we'll say display none. And then medium display, let's say block. So now when we go back and forth here, we can see the text is changing. Again, all of this is happening in this space. So I can see everything. And so even though some of these utility classes might look like overwhelming, if you zoom out and look at this, it looks like the Matrix or something like that, right? But what I'm actually finding myself doing as I use it, which is kind of the claim of Tailwind CSS in their docs, is that once you start actually using this, having everything available to you is nice because you're not reading all of this every time you're looking for it. I'm just kind of looking here. All of this stuff is kind of blurring out to me. It's in my peripheral vision. So I'm not really even paying attention to that. If you are, sorry. But you can really kind of isolate certain things here. Or you could even go so far as to fold all the classes in and then unfold the ones that you want to look at. So that makes it even easier to kind of work with this. But for right now, I'm going to unfold everybody. I'm going to save everybody to format. So we do have this working. So we got to bring these two guys together, U2 kiss. So we're going to say on medium screens, we're just going to change the justify content from space between to center. So medium, justify content, center. And then we can already see that we're going to need like a gap. In fact, I'm going to undo this. We're going to need some kind of space between these things. And we're going to need that little line. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give the sale link a border. So I can just say border left, 1 pixel solid. And we're not that worried about the color yet. We'll change the color in a sec. But I need to do two things. I need to create space between that border and the text. And then I need to create space between the items. And there's a couple of ways to do that. How I would do this is probably just say padding left 1 rem. And in this case, we could either add a margin left. Oh, there's some like ridiculous security message. Hopefully you can't hear that right now, but condo life, man. Somebody, some raccoon tripped over a security wire and it's like yelling at me. Okay, so this would actually technically work, but if we go back down here, we don't want that. So we want to make sure that we're still designing responsively. So I can just multi-cursor and just say like medium. So that would all go away. Up here, it's fine. And if we look a little bit closer, we can change the color of this border now. And so you might notice that like, in order for these to work as classes, they all have to be one string. So any spaces that you might have in the value of a border property need to be replaced with underscores, and then everything else will work fine. So I might say like, blue or red, or I choose another color from my design system. Like if I go P100, I can select it and I can just hit the up arrow to go through and find the right color. That's just like, you can see it, but you might miss it if you weren't looking. I think that's a pretty safe one. What do we think? Oh, it's even darker. We're gonna go 7. Let's go hard. Okay. So now we have this and we have this. And I think that like that's probably a good enough thing to do, but maybe we ship this because I think this is the same way here. Oh, we need our arrow. Let's do our arrow. Okay. Our arrow does show up on Tablet Portrait. I happen to have this bookmark. You could use an SVG for this if you really need to. I'm not going to go that far. I'm just going to copy an arrow. Okay. But we want to make sure that our arrow doesn't show on mobile, right? So why not? But whatever. That's the design. So we're going to show that. But we can just, again, say span. And then we can use the emit syntax. Actually, if you just hit a dot and give it like a class like this. Actually, is that going to work? Whatever. Medium. Let's try it. Medium. Yeah. Hold on for a sec. Let's do span. Yeah. Display. None. Medium. Display. Inline. Oh, that worked. And then just paste the arrow. What? Yep, paste the arrow. And so now that arrow is there, but on mobile it's not. Okay. And we could do some other cool stuff. I think this will still have that nice transition. Maybe we could even do something fancy like make the arrow like kind of move over if we hover over it. Let's save this. and go out to preview it real fast. And get rid of our admin bar. So we see our like nice little transition there. So what if we wanted this to jump over when we hovered over it? So what we want to do is, I think inline block is probably what we're going to need to transform the arrow when its parent is hovered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a class, this anchor tag. Let's just fold all the classes so you don't have to look at everything. And we're going to give that a class of group. This is a Tailwind thing. And then you can use, once the parent has a class of group, you can, on the children, you can say group-hover and do something. So what I will do is, I'll say group hover, and then I'll just to get a sanity check here, color red. Okay, so it'll style it when I hover over its parent. So then I can just change that to transform, translate x, 0.1 m, like a very small amount. See that? Oh, you'll probably be able to see it better here. And then we just can throw a transition in there. In fact, I can just type transition and hit tab and it'll autocomplete to this. There we go. And we have a nice little animation. And if I want to go crazy with it, I could, add more to this transform, like rotate, I don't know, 5 degrees or 5 degrees. Yeah, it goes down or negative, 45 degrees or whatever, like weirdo stuff like that. But what's, again, important about it is that you can just see what's happening. And you don't have to hope that your page builder gives you the opportunity to do this, or you don't have to buy a whole other plugin or some other thing. You just write it in the damn CSS. So let's unfold it all, take a look at everything. And that's pretty much it. We're looking at 18 lines of code with a few spaces in it. Hopefully that gave you an idea of like why this is useful, because there's really no big reason why you need to extract these into a semantic class. Like you might have different navigation bars, but and different like other things that need to be globalized. But for something like this, like not only would it be nice to just be able to punch this in once and forget about it and put it in your header template, but I could very easily take, I don't know, an hour out of my day and build you a dozen of these where you have kind of a tried and true, ready to go, like promotions banner for the top of your site or to stick to your header as you scroll down the page. That's really the big point of this, is like, I want to provide you with the componentry that you can click clack together just by making a node and pasting some stuff in. Then, and anybody who's learned code, I think, can attest to this, is like, you can go in and poke around and you can see like, what is this doing? What is that doing? But because all the classes are in, I guess I would say CSS English, and they're not super abbreviated, then maybe some of them you'll have to kind of understand that M is margin and P is padding. I guess I didn't even think to expose those like that. If I do, write it all out, it'll still work. I've just written some like shortcuts and helpers, to do that. But like you can kind of see what's going on. And so if you know CSS or have an interest in learning CSS, then this allows you to just put it directly on your markup and get stuff done with it. So I think I'm going to add this to the Aviator default components library as like a top bar. As you can see, I've made a couple of these already, and they were just experiments. But like every time I build something, no matter how meticulous or responsive I make it, like this, then it just becomes part of the library. And then you can just have it. You might not notice, but this has a very subtle like background gradient overlay on it. It has custom SVG icons on it. It's work. It's like, for somebody who might not be a professional, they might not even be able to make something as kind of calm and nicely spaced as this. Not to say that this is, anything to shake a stick at, but like, I can continually build layouts and sections and groups of sections that adhere to this. And if you are interested in learning this, or at least learning how to tweak this, then you have a whole component library at your disposal. But like I said, you can also just write good old HTML if you want to. So I hope that this was instructive, and I think this channel is just going to be full of me, building components. The first few videos, I'll have to do a lot of explanations, but gradually I'll move on to more complex layouts and more complex techniques. And there might even be some more custom classes that make your life easier. There might be some classes for like heat mapping or for animation that we can just put into the HTML and adhere to that principle that the HTML is king, and that whatever I build, I want you to be able to have, instead of you have to learn how to build it and have to have 10 years of experience in layout design as well. You don't. So thanks for watching. Please feel free to subscribe. I'm never going to show you one of those dorky subscribe bells, but if you do want to follow along, let you know when the next video pops off, and have a good one.